Lord Hyness and his clan, the Jambandran people, are one of the most mysterious groups in the Kirby series due to their unshakable ties to the ancient civilization that quickly spread across the cosmos. This civilization started in a world simply known as the Forgotten Land nowadays. And once they gained the power they would use to develop incredible technology in the future, they left for a so-called Land of Dreams. What and where this Land of Dreams is likely a very important part of establishing a rough timeline for the ancients' history. And we believe Hyness's clan is the key to understanding what that place is and the role it plays in the greater story. I'm Dawn, and I am joined by Dan, and together we are Danger After Dawn. So I hope if you think this sounds cool and you like the video, you should like the video down below and also subscribe maybe. So let's go ahead.
There's basically two agreed upon answers to what the Land of Dreams is. One of those being Halcandra and Popstar. The case can be made for both, but in our video in Kirby and the Forgotten Land,
which you should go watch it.
Go watch it, it's very good. We said that the Land of Dreams was obviously Dreamland, which we believe for a few reasons. For one, the lyrics of Welcome to the New World include some details like eating, napping, and the spring breeze that harkens to elements strongly associated with Kirby in Dreamland. There's also the details of Forgo's plan, which involves the need to capture Waddle Dees to power the internal capsule. We think that Forgo captures the poor Ds because the little guys were previously used to power the capsule when Lab Discoverer was still in operation. This reasoning ties into the game's theme of repetition. The idea being that the game's events happened because the New Worlders had deep contact with Popstar before eventually moving on to it and its surrounding planets, causing a repetition through the two planets being reconnected. We'll go into detail on some other reasons later, but those are just some of the things we mentioned in our video on Kirby's lore.
Since that video was focused on talking about our interpretations rather than overall arguments surrounding these plot points, we didn't discuss Halcandra at all, since it's largely irrelevant to how we view Forgotten Land's story and its impact on the rest of the series. However, even though we don't believe Halcandra is the Land of Dreams mentioned in Forgotten Land, we think it is important to discuss the theory and how we view it. The Jambandrans, we believe, lie at the center of this mystery. So let's get on with it. Let's get right on into it, okay? Let's do it.
Halcandra, being the Land of Dreams, has been third land for essentially two main reasons. The first being a song title for Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. This song is titled The Long Desired Land in English, but in Japanese, it uses a few characters from Leon Gar's mention of the Land of Dreams to have a title like The Dreamed of Land. Seems pretty cut and dry at paper. The other main claim is that the Land of Dreams isn't referring to Dreamland, because in Japanese, Dreamland is called Popopo Land. So that connection was never intentional. I don't really think this is a strong point as the first one for a few reasons. For one thing, even though these games are primarily written in Japanese, I feel like just completely writing off the connection that is made in English just because of that is unfair. Yes, there could be translation errors and erroneous connections made because of them, but these games are made primarily for Japanese and English-speaking audiences. After all, an entirely fictional English typeface is used all over Forgotten Land. While it is perfectly reasonable to scrutinize certain details between translations, I don't think this is one of those times, considering Popopo Land has been referred to as Dreamland on at least a few occasions, like in the credit for Return to Dreamland.
The Land of Dreams being Halcandra also kind of muddies the waters on the underlying story so far in the Kirby series. We learned recently of the calamity that destroyed Halcandra, which was the overwhelming power of the Massacre they created. Halcandra being their first pit stop in their long journey across the multiverse would mean that they widely survived that encounter with the Master Crown, moved to Popstar's galaxy, left again, and are now just somewhere. It doesn't really seem to line up with how they've been described and how their destruction has been depicted. They didn't even bring their main mode of travel, the lore Starcutter, with them for a large amount of their history if we're going with this interpretation. Like, they just left the lore there. Seems kind of weird. It is a common trope for ancient civilizations and media to have been brought to a mysterious end due to the overwhelming might of their technology. Like, this happens in, like, Zelda's, and I think it happens in Pokemon and Halo, too. It's, it happens in a bunch of different games. Many characters in the Kirby series, like Maglord, should have the means to find the living ancients if they're still thriving elsewhere. So I think it just generally is a little bit more confusing and less concise if the ancients at large did survived Halcandra, and Halcandra isn't their final resting place. I think it just is a little confusing. And as we said before, there are other reasons to believe Dreamland is the land of dreams, as we mentioned. At the end of the day, this piece of evidence is basically equal with that Japanese song title. Despite this, however, the vague nature of this land of dreams title is something we should take note of. For now, let's generally consider this to be referring to some sort of paradise, since that's what a dreamland is.
Void Termina has a few boss descriptions that include a mention of such a paradise. The description we are mentioning here are in-universe lyrics to the Star-Conquering Traveler, likely written by the Gembadrons. In each of these, there's a mention of a distant paradise that must be destroyed. Based on the ramblings of Hyness and his history with the ancients, it would appear this distant paradise he is asking for the destruction of is Halcandra. After all, he must know his sworn enemies abandoned his clan, for the place considering his home, Jabandra Brace, is named after it.
But this isn't the last mention of a distant paradise in the Japanese script. There's one more that is outside the bounds of these lyrics, which raises more than a few questions. In Void's final description, it is stated that Void, whilst enveloped in a gentle spring breeze, will alight upon the distant paradise with an understanding of the heart. This line is a direct reference to Kirby's origin story. The spring breeze brought Kirby to a distant paradise, which is
Dreamland. But how? This description seems to be claiming, based on the repeated use of the term distant paradise, that the entire time the Void Termina theme song had been referring to Popstar and Dreamland. Despite that, early in the game, Zanpakuto just calls Popstar immediately remote planets. But, even despite that, there's a pause screen description saying that the pop in Popstar is from the Japanese word mapop, which means hope, right next to lore, which means paradise, in the reference to the lore Starcutter. What's going on here? Is Popstar important to these people or not?
Now we're getting somewhere interesting. Hyness' clan has some connection to both Popstar and Halcandra. While the lyrics for Star-Conquering Traveler come from Hyness' perspective and are clearly referring to Halcandra, from our perspective, the one that's given by that final pause screen in Star Allies, we're asked to consider Popstar in a similar light. So, if Popstar was ever important, why do the Gembadron people not concern themselves with it anymore? Why has Popstar become a backwater planet, a measly remote world, a forgotten land?
In our previous video, the Dreamcandra theory, we claimed that Halcandra, when it was once a prosperous and paradisical planet, was home to the Dream Kingdom. Because of the Dream Kingdom's nature as an alternate dreamland, That would make Halcandra an alternate Popstar. We also said that Hyness and the base stages visit the location as well, given that they cameo in the game. They're not parallel counterparts like a vast majority of the characters in Super Kirby Clash, but rather the same people, just in the past. A time when Halcandra was relatively peaceful and the Aegis had not abandoned the Gembastion people. It makes sense Hyness had visited Halcandra at one point, otherwise his planet being named Jambandra wouldn't make much sense. But if he had been to the planet, why would he have ended up left behind in Popstar's universe? And why does he only vaguely allude to the idea of his fellow agents being somewhere nice and peaceful, instead of just saying they're on Halcandra?
Let's think back to Kirby and the Forgotten Land. In that game, it is heavily implied that the New Worlders had contact with Popstar prior to moving there. This is actually explicitly stated in the Japanese novel adaptation of the game, but in-game, it can be deduced by blueprints depicting Kirby, outer space, and Popstar itself, as well as the implication that Forgo's plan is based on hamster wheels previously using Waddle Dees for energy, which is something that we actually can also see in egg engines. It could also be assumed that the New Worlders found plenty of planets before Popstar and just settled on that one. After all, they've been researching for like 30 years at least, and Popstar is in a totally different dimension. They ultimately left the Forgotten Land due to the legend of the meteors coming to end life on the planet. Assuming they went to Popstar, it makes sense that they eventually traveled to other planets all around Popstar, their initial land of dreams. After all, there are Fountain of Dreams all over the galaxy, as well as multiple abandoned civilizations on other planets. But why would they stop at just inhabiting those planets? In a similar vein to the discovery of Popstar, they managed to find somewhere that might be even nicer. And it just so happens to be a parallel Popstar. The Ancients would also inhabit this planet, with Hyness and his clan visiting occasionally.
But one day, something terrible happens. A galactic crisis that was so bad it could be considered a nightmare, as Hyness describes it. Luckily, his clan put an end to it. However, the damage was done. And a repeat of history. This generation of agents also feared that peaceful days might be behind them in this galaxy. So they began to abandon their homes once again out of fear, leading them to the planet they had discovered previously, the parallel planet Popstar, now known as Halcandra. Over time, the agents hunkered down on the perceived threats, building war machines, hiding away the Master Crown and many treasures with the Dragonlandia, and ultimately totally excommunicating with the Gembastion people from their new home. Hyness would grow enraged, as much like Forgo, he and his clan were used for their incredible magical prowess and then left to rot alone in an abandoned world. Popstar is now a new forgotten land, alongside every planet in its galaxy.
This continues the theme of repetition and cycles in Kirby and the Forgotten Lands narrative and explains many of the missing pieces of ancient history. The Land of Dreams, though it originally was Popstar, had its meaning lost, and that land, as it is currently understood, is Halcandra. Though today it has been reduced to nothing, it is a term that has evolved over time. When Hyness rambles about the ancients finding some other pleasant place to live, it isn't his ignorance to Halcandra's existence, but it is him deeply believing that these people will continue to flee from any crisis that befalls them. He doesn't know that they, largely, have finally met their end due to their hubris.
And there you have it. That's our interpretation of some of Jambandra's history and the true nature of the Land of Dreams.
So hopefully we made it clear why we think Popstar is the original Land of Dreams, while also explaining why Halcandra is also associated with that phrase. So basically, Halcandra was the replacement for Popstar, leaving it a forgotten land, in the same way that Popstar was a replacement for the forgotten land, which left it as a, I think you got it. There's actually a little more to this whole like theory speculation thing. We kind of got like a chain going. If you noticed, the last video and this video kind of linked together. We've got one more. Because the Jambashans actually have another curious and dubious artifact that has been referenced in cryptic ways that might tie into this. So I hope you liked and subscribed to the video so you could see that next one. So you could, if you could see it, so you should do it right now.
Yeah, exactly. Stay tuned for our video on the mysterious book of legends that Hyness and Magalor have owned, and how it ties into the story of cycles, and is connected to the meteoric prophecy in the star-crossed world.